That being said, what is left to expend for us at the end of September is about $4.2 million, with, again, the breakdown of general funds and the required set-asides, both federally and state, of learning loss at the federal and state level, after-school programming, and summer enrichment. Bless you. So,
I'm sorry, Dr.
No,
Gilbert.
I'm sorry, I clicked too fast.
No, that's okay. That 4.2, that was the total allocation, right? That's not what's left in there? That's
that
what's
was the
left.
total. 2.5 is what is remaining. 2.547096 is what is remaining.
Okay.
And you see that there in the general fund area. And so we have then the remaining set-asides to also spend. A majority of our general fund expenditures will be the indoor air quality projects that are happening at West. And so that will be a majority, about 1.8 million of that money will be through the IAQ projects. We're very lucky to be able to support that. We have some staff obviously built into that, credit recovery, summer learning experiences, home visits, online tutoring, et cetera, have all been able to be supported as a result of this grant. Are there any questions?
So most of this has been spent as of today, so.
We have about 32% or so remaining, I think,
Sorry.
about in that area.
That's a lot to spend
And
in
again,
a
most of
couple
it
months.
should be assumed by the IAQ projects for the remaining balance.
Any question for Dr. Gilbert? Thank you, Dr. Gilbert, for all of your service, too.
Of course,
Yes.
thank you. Title I delinquent, thank you.
Good luck.
Hello, good evening. So Title I-D grant. So this grant provides financial assistance to our educational program that we have in collaboration with our, with the, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank.
River Valley.
With River Valley, I'm sorry, I have a lot in my background. With River Valley Detention Center, where we service students within that detention center. We pay for salaries and benefits. We provide educational services. We also fund supplies. This year, we've also purchased additional laptops, hoping to increase some of the instructional programming that we can offer through online. So I'm wanting to add like iExcel to this as well. We currently have Apex. We also fund or pay for GED assessments. Exciting enough this summer, working with Dr. Natalie Coleman, we've added After the Peanut to break down and add that equity into there and giving students access to some of the STEM activities that they otherwise would not have access to. Initially, the fund started out with about $44,000 or so. Then we received a carryover of $62,000 or so, totaling about $107,000. I want to say out of total expenditure, I want to say we've spent, we've spent a good 30–40% of this, of the initial. Questions about Title I-D? Next, we have the IDEA grant. Okay, so the IDEA grant is for our special education programming here within the district. Within the district, it is meant to provide that supplemental funds in order to make sure we are providing equitable resources to our students who are serviced through our special education department. Some of the things that we fund through our IDEA grant are definitely salaries and benefits. We fund paraprofessional support. We have a DHH itinerant, instructional coaches, social worker, clerical support. We also fund any ESY, teacher, para, and speech services that we offer during that time. We also funded teachers working on curriculum work over the summer programming, like our summer enrichment program is now out of IDEA funds. And then, of course, we have non-proportionate shares. Outside of that, with services that we have contracted, so we've done iExcel, Learning Ally, Read 180. We've just received our PACE lab this summer, so we also funded that through our IDEA grant. And then through the summer enrichment program, we also do some vocational support as well as enrichment for students. And then professional development. This school year, we sent a team of teachers to CEC, and they came back very excited, so we were able to fund that as well, and we're looking forward to having them push out professional development for our team. After we work in collaboration with Dr. Brown, and we're continuing to audit our programs and identify where those needs for professional development lie. One of the big areas we're looking at going into next school year is progress monitoring. So we are doing summer training for FastBridge as well as for IXL to expand the use in our instructional level classrooms of that as well. Any other questions? Of course, supplies is also funded through IDEA. Any other questions over IDEA spending?
Thank you.
And then we also have IDEA ARP, which has ended. So IDEA ARP, we pay for salaries for staff, training, consultants. The big part of ARP, we funded a lot of our summer enrichment program in the past through there, which has now shifted to IDEA funding now that we no longer have access to those funds. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And quickly before Chris come up, I want to clarify, so ESSER 3 total $12,483,000.
All right, thank
So
you.
the 4.2 is what's remaining.
Oh, gotcha, okay. Still a lot of money to spend in 3 months,
Yeah.
no?
We had the entire year.
Yeah.
to
Oh,
spend
this whole year?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
We just have to have it all spent by the end of September.
okay.
Good evening. So I'll be going over our career and technical grants. This year, we're fortunate enough to have 3 of them. We have our typical Perkins, which is our federal money to run our CTE programs. We have CTEIG, which comes from the state. And then each year, we seem to be awarded some new opportunities for some more specialty grants for career and tech. This year, we were able to apply for the MET grant, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So about 3 grants we'll go over today. Totaling about $600,000. For Perkins and CTI, they're sort of sister grants that are tied together. Their function and purpose is really just to enable schools to run run CTE programs. And so we can leverage that funding for anything from supplies to professional development, software and services, et cetera. Most things you would anticipate in most other grants. We do have some limitations we have to work around, but for the most part, running a CTE program. So in terms of Perkins, you can see our allocation there was about $250,000 this year. It did go up slightly. It seems to be going up little by little each year. And you can see sort of the breakdown in terms of percentages there. I did want to highlight some notable expenses, some of the fun stuff that we do get to experience with our students, right? And so we use some of our Perkins funding for some salaries like our child development, lab aides. We also pay for software for CTE programs, including Adobe suites, Autodesk softwares, etc. This year we began the Amped-On Algebra program, so there's a lot of material and equipment needs for those programs. So we were able to purchase a lot of items in that regard. Some embroidery machines, as well as certifications. I know a lot of our partners find those quite valuable, especially OSHA 10, ServSafe. Students need those things to begin employment. And so we're actually able to fund not only the certification, but the training that goes along with that from our instructors. So that was Perkins. And then for CTI, it's the state version. Again, same sort of stipulations on that, and some of the notable items that we were able to leverage. This grant for this year includes some co-curricular activities, so we're able to pay staff to work with students after school in formal capacities, like our Schools to Apprenticeship coordinators, our Skills USA coordinators, and we're able even to fund some of our work-based learning coordinators this summer, who just began a couple weeks ago, out of this funding as well. So a lot of really fun and innovative stuff in terms of salaries for staff tied to these programs. Skills USA participation, we do want to make sure that we're able to open the opportunity for all of our students to participate in these things. So as much as we can fund out of the grant, we do, though there are some other funds that have to be set aside from other sources. Sewing machines, ViewSonic displays. Certainly, we purchase all of our typical supplies like wood, acetylene, and gas welding, etc. But we're able to put in some additional newer cutting-edge technology like 3D printers, virtual reality goggles, and you saw an embroidery machine earlier as well. So lots of really fun stuff there. This year, CTI, we did receive a substantial increase in our allocation. So you can see that note at the bottom there in terms of an additional funding that was added at the start of the year and then towards the end of the fiscal grant year as well. And that's all still in the $250,000.
Yep, Chris, have you used transfer yet?
I have. It's so fun. I feel like I
It
should
is.
be paid by them because
Yep.
I'm such a good rep. I show it off as much as I can because it's awesome. It's amazing.
When will the students get an opportunity to use it?
Yeah, so this year we are actually able to pilot 2 different carts at each library. So our library cart at each library this year. And so we had a lot of our orientation teachers, some of our instructional teachers. I think there was even some science teachers that were able to go leverage the platform. So I think the more our students start to see it, you'll start to see more teachers using
Okay,
it.
yep.
So yeah, we will continue those services for next year.
I learned a lot about myself demoing.
It's, if you ever get the
VR.
opportunity, it's
Yeah.
super fun.
Okay.
It's very cool. I'd like to answer any questions on those 2 particular grants, CTI or Perkins. All right, and then we will wrap up with our 3rd grant this year. We did just recently receive our MET grant, and that stands for Manufacturing, Engineering, Technology, and Trades. And the purpose of this grant is to essentially build a career pathway in MET, any career pathway in MET. So we've done a lot of work regionally throughout the school year with some of the other school districts in the region in terms of working with Joliet Junior College to support our AIMS students specifically, as that is a really nice tie to the manufacturing career pathway. And so this year, this will be a 3-year grant. We'll end our first year in a couple weeks here. And so we're getting it'll be about $100,000 per year. And the 3rd year it falls off a little. But as long as we're building a career pathway, that's what that's what that funding can be used for. So for this year, we did use it to purchase some capital equipment, so some very large pieces of equipment in order to better align to our AIM program in hopes of better preparing students as freshmen, sophomores, juniors in the high school setting so that they can then be better prepared to participate as a senior in the AIM program. So we'll continue to apply for this grant over the next 2 years, and we'll continue to leverage the funding in that same capacity, bringing that equipment, those skills down into our intro level CTE programs. Love to answer any questions about the MET Career Pathway Grant.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm going to talk about Title III and 1003A, which are pretty connected. They're pretty much braided at this point. So Title III, typically we use for professional development. There is some family engagement, family involvement components with our BPAC, our additional language instruction services, so after-school tutoring at both campuses. And then we did this year provide some language translation devices for our support staff at both buildings. So we did use our budget of $118,000 pretty evenly. So the salary and benefits is participation in our professional development. SIOP is really what we'll spend a bulk of our monies on in terms of paying participants, and then 10038, which will be used to actually purchase the workshop from Savas. So we're using those, we're braiding both of those. We did see that the Pocket Talks that we're using for translation services, we had 50 at each campus, but they were such a hit and our staff was using them. We're going to increase them, and we did. We doubled our order of them. So we'll be able to utilize those in other areas, including athletics and activities. So we really see that that is something that we can utilize moving forward, and that does take up quite a bit with the instructional resources. Any questions on Title III? And then 1003A, which is the last year of this particular grant cycle for 1003A. That is for our EL population at the Joliet Central campus only. So we used those monies for professional development for central staff. So what we did is we paid for all of our SIOP training, and then we used Title III to pay for participation. That's what I meant by braiding there. And then our supplemental EL staff, so that did pay for ESL bilingual instructional coach at Central, and then 2 other positions for teaching, and then our bilingual social worker, so paying for salary and benefits there. And then we spent a very small percentage of that on supplemental resources. And that's because we spent a lot of monies the previous 2-3 years on instructional services, so we decided to go in that direction more than instructional resources. Feel pretty good at that. Any questions on those two?
I just want to say thank you to our grant managers. I also want to thank Dr. Hampton and Mrs. McDonald. We have a structure where we meet monthly with the grant managers so that we're listening and talking about where money should be spent. One of the main focus this year was, okay, ESSER's going away, and we did pilot a lot through ESSER. So what is staying and what is going, and if it's staying, where is it, how is it getting paid for? And so there was a lot of work put into this year in talking about that. And they manage the grants wonderfully because IWAS is not so much fun to deal with and all the requirements. And so I just want to say thank you, but thank you to Dr. Hampton, Mrs. McDonald as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next presentation is Mrs. McDonald with an educational services update. And so she's going to be talking about MTSS with us this evening.
All right, I remember I have to stay here. I can't go to the screen.
Right.
Okay. All right, good evening. Diane McDonald, Assistant Superintendent for Educational Services. I'd like to give a brief update on the services that we provided this school year. So if you recall, in January, I gave a small overview of our benchmarking, so our STAR fall to winter and the growth associated with that in the different courses. So today's presentation is our fall to spring testing and some of the data that was requested by the board in regards to some of our intervention areas. So I want to start off with who does this work. And we know that this all really starts with our classroom teachers, but we have 3 distinct groups within the district that makes this happen. The first is our building MTSS teams. We do have release time for specific core teachers at each grade level to work on the MTSS team, who is led by a grade level administrator. They have a weekly schedule for collaboration and data cycles. They also, you would say, they have a caseload, so they call it a watch list for each team where they identify students that are off track, and they meet with these students on a regular basis. We have a district MTSS team, so that includes our district in building leadership. We meet monthly, well, we met monthly with a data focus. We did have support from our MTSS consultant this past year, Dr. Brown, and we also embed during this time needed professional development as we come upon those requests. And then lastly, we have a district math team. This is compiled of district and building leadership, classroom teachers, instructional coaches, our math interventionists. They meet monthly with a focus on our math, specifically our Carnegie curriculum, so looking at grades 9, 10, 11. And they also receive support from our MTSS consultant. How we do all this work this year, at the building level, we have specific criteria for entrance and exit into our learning labs. Learning labs are, how would you say, a very interactive advisory, a 25-minute advisory where instruction is provided to identified students. We leverage direct instruction and also computer-based instruction. We progress monitor in the platform called Panorama. We came across that platform during COVID and have leveraged it since. We are rolling it over for the next school year as we find it very valuable. How we do it too, our assistant principals are very proactive in enrolling exits and exiting students in Infinite Campus into and out of our learning labs. The teams actually completed learning walks throughout the school year, looking at a rubric based on high leverage practices that we would expect to see in our classrooms. They have a district-wide communication system. For example, we let families know why their student is in a learning lab or updates on that. They have professional development for the learning lab teachers as well as the team. So for our district MTSS team, we provide progress updates on our students that are receiving the Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions. And again, we have continuous professional development. And this past, last summer, we created an MTSS playbook, which we'll be updating next week. And then the math team spent a lot of time looking at our math double block structure and the effectiveness of it. They have established criteria for moving students in and out, identification of high leverage practices, that it's expected in all math classrooms. Again, those teachers did learning walks, identified different resources, and have embedded professional development for the classroom teachers on our school improvement days. So you have how we do that, who does it, and then the data that we use. You'll see consistency amongst all three groups. So we really leverage our dashboard Panorama, our STAR, IXL, and our watch lists on top of our grade data and assessment data. Was there a question?
Yeah, when you were talking about the how, you were really focusing on learning labs. Is that for math only, or are there other interventions that the MTSS teams are putting into place for students? Reading, social, emotional, those kind of things? Is it just math the focus?
No, the building MTSS teams focuses on literacy and math. So
is there a reading lab too?
There are. So
There are,
the
okay.
learning labs are for literacy and for math. So those are those Tier 2 interventions that we provide students that do not have literacy as a class or math double block as a class. So that's what the buildings are working on. But we also have a district math team, and the math team was established actually before our building MTSS teams, because when we were rolling out Carnegie math, we needed our team to come together to look at the implementation of that, and that's where we dived into the actual double block math structure. So what you would see, so when we talk about supports for all our students, when we say all students, most of our students should be well supported in Tier 1. So when they talk about the tiers, 80% of our class, or 80% of our students should be well supported in Tier 1. And then what you would typically expect is that 15%, where 15% of your students would need additional resources, and then 5% would need a few more, so Tier 3. Our breakdown right now is about 56 to 60 of our students. Tier 1 instruction is enough. Our biggest area is actually Tier 2, and then a small amount in Tier 3. So we're seeing shifts, so it used to be a lot less in Tier 1 and more in Tier 2 and Tier 3. And with the interventions that we've put in place, plus also with our sender schools, that we're seeing the green area, what we're providing for all students seems to be the most is what they need, rather than needing Tier 2 or Tier 3. So when we talk about Tier 1, we're talking about all students. And just to clarify for the board, core classes for graduation is English 1 through 4. This past year, we offered pre-AP English 1, so it replaced our English class for freshmen. We have 3 years of math requirement, and we have vertical alignment of these courses. It is Carnegie curriculum for algebra, geometry, and advanced algebra. Science is biology and physics. And then social science, we have pre-AP world history and geography. That's a new class for this year on top of US history and government. These courses are aligned to standards, state standards. With our curriculum, we have common assessments, both formative and summative. We also have common redo expectations for relearning and retaking. And we also offer online tutoring to all students. So some of the information I wanted to share, and I shared this in the fall. Actually, Mr. Oswald shared part of this at the AP presentation in October. So this is our kids. So these are our students, our freshman students enrolled in pre-AP English 1, and this is their data, and it's a nationally normed test. So this is College Board assessments. They're called learning checkpoints. It's managed by the College Board. So you go into their site, students take this checkpoint. So this is in our English classes. So this was we can all just say we were very a little nervous about implementing like a very rigorous curriculum, and there was a lot of learning. And when we shift to something new, we know that the change process is difficult, but we're very excited to see our students being very successful in these classes with these learning checkpoints. And what's exciting is that now this cohort will be taking pre-AP English 2. So now we'll go into a second year to see how our students do in those learning checkpoints, and hopefully we'll see growth. And then same for pre-AP World History and Geography. Again, they take learning checkpoints throughout the year, and these are learning checkpoints created by the College Board. So this shows that our students are competing with students nationwide. So thank you to Sean and Paul for pushing that.
I have a question about the pre-AP English 1 to English 2. So students in pre-AP English, is there another level for freshmen? Because I'm assuming some are going to go into the seminar class next year, the AP seminar, as sophomores?
So this is college prep, so this isn't honors. So
Okay.
these would not be our honors students. So if I'm in pre-AP English 1, I will, unless I requested a level change, I will move into pre-AP English 2. If I'm in pre-AP English 1 honors, next year I'm going into pre-AP English honors 2 next year, but it's not till 25, 26 that they'll go into seminar. We just approved seminar, so that will go into effect for the 25, 26 school year.
Okay.
You could see some kids though in pre-AP English 1 who would go into AP seminar, like either they could request it or their teacher could recommend it, parents. So there is a on-ramp for students in pre-AP to AP seminar for the 25, 26
Okay,
school year.
not for next school year?
No.
No, they could go into
Into honors.
pre-AP
English.
English 2.
Honors.
So there is still an on-ramp to like the honors version of the class next year.
So do we have this data also for the pre-AP English 1 honors sections?
Yes.
Is it in this presentation?
No, this I focus solely on college prep.
Okay. I'd like to see all of it, if, that'd be great, thank you.
The honors presentation separate?
No, I just would like to see it, just to see where those students are, how they're performing on the checkpoints and things like that too.
Could we, would you be okay if we incorporate that into the AP presentation?
Sure.
What, like that we
Yeah.
do in the fall, so that we could sort of see and keep that together? Would that be okay?
That's fine.
Okay.
Also, we offer tutoring, so I appreciate Dr. Gilbert keeping track of this. Moving into next school year, Mrs. McMorris will be overseeing our tutoring program. We had over, I would say, almost 1,500 scheduled sessions, but I want to clarify, a scheduled session does not mean a completed session. So we have some students that schedule a session, but they don't attend the session. We've been very proactive this year, where we would contact the student, we would contact the family, we would have our MTSS coordinators contact families. So I know we've been very, like Dr. Gilbert worked out a system, and we've reduced that, but we still have the problem of students signing up but not following through. It was funded through our ARP grant. We spent $53,000 on it this past school year. We are recommending to continue the support. We find that the students that attend it find it very valuable. We will work on additional guidelines for no-shows and cancellations, and we're embedding this into Title I. We also look at our entire instructional program through benchmarks. We do benchmarking through Renaissance STAR, and we give the test in grades 9 through 12 in our English classes and in our math classes, and that would be algebra, geometry, and advanced algebra. We give it in the fall, winter, and the spring. So I'm going to go over the benchmarking. It's similar to what I showed you in January. It's the same structure. So if you look at it from left to right, it goes by the course. So for example, algebra instructional. So this is a 9th grade math class instructional level. 42 students, that means that I have 42 scores, 42 students who had a fall score and a spring score, and then their average growth percentile. Yellow means that they're growing at as predicted. Green is they're growing beyond that, and red is below. If the scores are in green, they're at or above grade level. So I will tell you, I'll be very honest, and I'm sure we have parents in here as well, but it's very difficult to give the spring benchmark. Our students, we give it in the spring, so we've done our science tests, our SAT, PSAT 8, 9, 10, AP testing, and other assessments, and to get students to take the spring test seriously it's difficult, and we see it more so with our upperclassmen. So if you have suggestions, I'd love to hear them. But we look at also our fall to winter, so that's a really good data point. This is the whole year, but you'll see that the end number goes down because I don't have students take the test, or the scores go down because they're not fully vested into taking the test. And we are proactive. Our teachers tell them this test counts. We're using this data to place you into interventions for next year. We share that message. Again, so then I'm going to go through. So then this is our STAR Math West campus. As Mrs. Cage had said, we have work that we've been putting in place for next school year with our instructional math and instructional reading. So we hope within the next couple years we'll see those scores shift. Same with, then I'm going to go through, this is Central Campus for math, West Campus for math. So when you see the 2 green, that means that fall and spring, that average score students were at grade level. And what we're also seeing with our growth percentiles, we are moving higher to that 60%. When we looked at this several years ago, we would be in the high 30s. Now we're in the high 40s to 50s. Here's our math. And then math at West. So we look at grades 9, 10, and 11 for math because those are the 3 graduation requirements. Any questions on math? So we also talk about Tier 2, so supports that we have for students who need more support in math. So we offer 2 different interventions, double block math, which is an initial 55 minutes of math instruction. At Central Campus, we had 432 students who received this intervention, and 90% of them had a passing grade in math. At West Campus, we had 355 students, and 85% of them had a passing grade in math. We also have learning labs. So those are students in a single period math, but need additional support, but not as much as, say, a 55-minute period of double block. So you could see the numbers there. And again, with almost 80% average in math at Central and 89% average with a passing grade in math. I think that was something that the board had asked about how many students and their passing grade. I also have their STAR data, and I also included their grade equivalency, so you understand the work that our interventionists are doing and where our students are starting and where they potentially end. And remember, this is just a school year, so when we have them for 3 years, the potential for student growth is even more. So I break this down by campus and also by lab. So it has their average student growth, their grade equivalency. So if you look at Central 9th grade, students were from a 4.9 to 4.7 grade level equivalency. So that's almost 5th grade equivalency. And then their growth. So I calculated the differences. And remember, this is an average of all students. Some students had more, some students had less. So sometimes that's why I have a negative number. And then again, showing you how we progress monitor, how we leverage this in Panorama, and everyone has access to this. So if a counselor wants to go in and look on a student, all progress monitoring is in Panorama. Our social workers, counselors, if there are any questions about a student's progress. We also have a math interventionist at each campus. They provide supports for students in addition to Tier 1 and Tier 2. They push in or pull out in our Algebra 1 and Geometry Double Block. Again, you can see the number of students they impacted and the growth. So they leverage IXL with our math interventionists in the class, and about 100 points is 1 year of growth, so a great equivalency. Question?
Yes. Can you talk about how the goal-setting component of this program works, and is it effective? Do you see a difference?
With teachers working with students on what their STAR numbers are and how they grow, and those get reported out.
So I would start first with the classroom level. So when a teacher gives the STAR test, that I know many teachers, I can't say all, but many teachers have embedded this into their practices, setting the stage for giving the benchmark, talking to students about the importance. And then once they give the benchmark, they look at their score, they talk about areas for improvement. And like, for example, one teacher, she shared with me that we'll have like almost conferencing along the way. So then when they take the spring, the fall, or the winter and the spring. So it happens at the classroom level. When we look at our data, so we just actually got data from our sender schools for incoming freshmen. They shared MAP data with us, STAR data, and I've shared that with the assistant principals and the freshman academy coordinators, and they're breaking that data down to not only to start actually identifying students that are going to go into the learning labs, but they're also looking at the kids that we place in math double block. So they're looking at it at the data at the student level to make sure placement was correct. Because we place students based on fall data, but we also get spring data, and maybe they've grown enough that they don't need math double block. So we're being very proactive with that data. And then our teams will also, once the learning lab teachers have the roster for their kids, it is very individualized. Now that we've shifted to where it's direct instruction and computer-based, they will leverage, they'll have the goal setting with the kids based on, okay, here's where you are. The kids know their exit criteria, and that's a goal for them to work towards. So if my exit criteria is like maybe 150 points, like that's almost like a carrot for me as a student to work towards and to try to get out of the intervention. But what we're finding is that a lot of our students end up, they need the full semester or they need the full year, even being in a learning lab. So I would say when you say goal setting, it happens at the various levels from when we get the data to the classroom teacher, and then to the MTS teams, and we're actually putting that data into Panorama. So we love Panorama. I highly recommend it.
But I guess the clarification question that I would need to know is, are you saying that some teachers do it or all teachers are doing it? Is it, because if all the teachers are doing it at Central, but none of the teachers are doing it at West, it's hard to, or half the teachers are doing it in Math 1, but none of the other teachers are
For
doing
like
it.
individual conferencing.
Yeah, like
So
how is that?
It's happening in all learning labs. So it's happening with our learning labs, but at the classroom level, I cannot say. we could request it, but to make sure that it happens, I mean, that would be like, that would be something with the curriculum directors that we would work on.
And additional guidance, and then we could work that into our walkthroughs
Right.
for best practices.
Thank you.
It's hard to determine, right, if it's working or not, if only some people are doing it. So I just wanted to know if it was part of the curricular process or not, so.
I think it's
Good
best,
question.
but I think it is best practice with this program that.
It is.
After the student takes the assessment, that
Yes.
teachers should conference with them to look at what their strengths are, look at where the growth, where they should improve their scores. And my experience with it is that it does give some motivation to the student to want to do better after the talk.
Totally don't disagree with that, but I also know that, you know, like as a boy who went through this, he would never be able to come back and tell me about it. So I think there might even need to be a parent participation piece in this, even like an email, like talk to your kid about his scores.
We do send out scores to the parents.
Right, but no, I'm just saying like, hey, I met with your child, we talked about this is.
From the
his-"
teacher,
Right,
not
yeah.
just the score report.
Not just the score report, right.
From the teacher.
Yep.
Yep.
Tell the team, I'll put it on our summer to do this. No, that's a good point. No, I could say that it happens,
Being
but.
critical, I'm just trying.
No,
to-
absolutely.
100% fidelity, I can't say it with 100%.
But we can absolutely and should work towards that. You know, there's goal setting for common assessment in the classroom, then you have IXL, then you have STAR Math, so there's a lot of assessments there too. So I think it's definitely talking about how you can do these things and how you can do them with fidelity, with the multiple assessments students take.
And just to point out, 2 new things for next year, for the 24-25 school year. We did add a new assistant principal of teaching and learning, so they will be meeting with our MTSS teams at the buildings on a bi-weekly basis. And also we'll be embedding the use of IXL in our single period math classes. So there, we will not be partnering with Dr. Brown for next year because we have the leadership in the buildings to support our MTSS.
With math, we're still partnering with Dr. Brown
For special ed.
for special education.
All right, moving on to reading. Same structure. So again, if you look at this, this is our English classes, number of students that I have a fall and spring score, their growth percentile, and then again, the green, the yellow, and the red is color-coded for our growth percentile. So here is STAR for West Campus. You see English 1 Honors is green. The boxes are green, excuse me. That means that the average score of the students are at grade level. And then I'll move through 10th grade STAR at Central. 10th grade STAR at West. 11th grade STAR at Central. 11th grade STAR at West. And then this is where we get to our seniors who, if it says NA, I don't have scores because they didn't take the spring score. We love our seniors. So we're going to work on how to better assess them.
It's hard.
So one of the resources I wanted to share with the board is called Newsella. We use this as a tier 1 resource. It's used in our literacy classes, English, our social science and science and SPED and other areas use it. It is a valuable resource that we found. Actually, Newsella wants to do a study on us because of how well we utilize this resource within our classrooms. We've gotten really good feedback from our teachers in regards to the use of it and how interactive and engaging it is. When we talk about tier 2, so we're talking about some students. So some students need additional support in regards to literacy. So we do offer a literacy class at each campus. We have Literacy 1 and Literacy 2. So this is a combination of those 2 classes. We have 264 students that are in literacy at Central and 197 at West. And we also recognize that Central Campus has more bilingual students, so there could be that language barrier. We also offer a reading lab for, a learning lab for reading, so it's that 25-minute academic advisory. At Central Campus, we have 195 students, and 92% of them had a passing grade in English. At West, we have 235, and an average of 84 students had a passing grade in their English classes. Here's some additional data. Oh, I went too fast. Here is some of the growth data for our reading labs. So I pulled their growth percentiles, their grade equivalencies, and their fall to spring averages. Again, you can, if we just go to, like I'm confident with the freshmen because freshmen really follow directions and take things like they'll listen to their teachers. So most of them, but to understand that, like the 9th grade reading lab, we're working with students at a 5th grade reading level, and same like us, West Campus was a little higher. And then again, recommendations for next year for reading, again, embedding the leadership of our new assistant principals for teaching and learning. And we are offering pre-AP English 2 and pre-AP English 2 honors. So that's my presentation on the supports that we offered within the classrooms and school day. In a couple months, I think in a month or two, I will be providing a presentation on our recovery. So after the fact, the different recovery programs we offer at the district. Questions for me? All right. Thank you.
And the next document is the instructional materials report. And this is aligned to policy 6210. This is an annual report that shares the resources that the district is paying for. There's information in there about textbooks. There's the textbook workbook list, as well as subscriptions and technology resources. And this is something that comes out of Mrs. McDonald's office. So between her and I, we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I'm not seeing a lot of textbooks, I'm seeing a lot of like web-based softwares. Is that really where the bulk of the?
No, the textbooks are on the first page. So the front of the memo says how much we spent on new textbooks.
And then the list is following in the
Yeah.
very small font.
Yeah, okay.
But I will say that there have been shifts over the last decade specifically to, you know, if there's the ability to go with technology resource and it is cost effective and it's economical and it makes sense, we have shifted to in those areas.
Well, and it helps the kids be prepared for class too, because they just have to bring a laptop instead of
Which, I mean,
book to each class on top of the laptop.
like that software, right?
The textbook list is on the next page.
Okay.
Was that on a tiny print?
Yes. Are there any questions regarding the instructional materials report? And we do this at the same time as we do the grant reports, because a lot of our resources are grant funded. If we go towards a new resource, we look to make sure that we can, if possible, pay for it out of a grant, because that just makes sense and fiscally responsible, and then we determine what can we do each year based on our funding. If there are no questions, then we also have the spring recovery grant, spring recovery report, and I know Mrs. McDonald would be happy to answer any questions. This is traditionally has been a report that we do at the end of each semester with the extension of credit recovery. We are moving towards that presentation in August that will look at the entire year. One of the questions that the board had asked for last year is how students are doing after credit recovery. So we'll talk about, are these reports that we continue to do, or do we do that annual presentation? And you could give us that direction in August, but we thought we'd stay with this report until we have that new presentation for you. Any questions? All right, that concludes superintendent reports.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. So now we'll go into action items. So action item A, 2024-2025 Title I Plan. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Questions, concerns? Roll call, please.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Namera?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stipp?
Yes. Action item B, agreement between Joliet Township High School and Subject Technologies Incorporated. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Questions, comments?
I just want to share, I set the stage for this when we had a presentation, I think it was last month, and we met with Subject, we met with a big team of teachers, and then our small group, and we brought in our new director for multilingual services. So we're going to start off with a small amount of licenses for both campuses. We're focusing on our newcomers. Our assistant principals have some really neat ideas of how they want to leverage these. But the licenses is unlimited access to all their classes. And it also includes tutorials in Spanish. So students can actually leverage a tutoring hotline if they need help while navigating this class. So we're really excited about piloting this program with our newcomer students.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Stipp?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Namera?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Action item C, Wellness Policy 650 and Triennial Review. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
Questions, comments?
Yes, this recommendation just ensures that Brian Shaw, our Director of Support Services, has met all of the requirements of Board Policy 6.50 in regards to student wellness, good nutrition, and physical activity.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stipp?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Namera?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Action item D, Workers' Compensation Renewal. May I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Questions, comments?
Yes, this is a recommendation for proposal for renewal for our workers' compensation insurance. It's through IPMG. The increase is $77,000. However, we feel as a district, we're doing well. You can see that our experience modifier, which is the indicator that determines how well we're performing with our workers' comp, which basically means wellness, not wellness programs, but return to work programs. We have professional development training. We have a small committee that we work with through our consultant. And so we've done a good job of returning our staff back to work, but also installing preventive measures for our staff. So you see that increase of 77,000. However, industry, they're seeing 15, 20, 25, 30% increases in our workers' comp. So the preventive measures that we're putting in place, we believe they're working.
I've seen the increases across the board.
Yeah.
Roll call, please.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stipp?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Namera?
Yes.
Action item E, Metal Detection Recommendation. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Questions, comments?
Yes, this is a recommendation to replace our 12-plus-year-old current metal detector systems. They're old, they're antiquated, very difficult to get replacement parts. So as we were talking, meaning myself and Ed, about replacing, we went and we actually analyzed different metal detector systems that was out there and available to us. And we were very impressed with the Evolve system. The newer, latest, greatest technology that utilizes AI capabilities that would allow us to have a lot more efficiencies, proficiencies in terms of having students come through. It also allows us to weapon detect. Students would not have to empty out their pockets, do the things like that. So we feel that this will be beneficial to the district. We're looking to pay this over a 3-year period so that we can budget, similar to when we upgraded the Blue Point system. We're paid over a 3-year period. We're recommending to purchase 10 at this time. We may still utilize some of the Garrett machines as support, but the 10 here will be our main systems for the district. And we would have them indoors and outdoors.
Will that remove like the need for wanding?
Yes.
So there'll be no more close contact wanding? Okay. And you said you went out and saw different schools.
Yes.
Did anybody from the building go out, like any of the security or
Yeah,
building
so-
principals?
I'm trying to remember, did Brett, I think Brett went, Steve Locke, myself, Ed, who else went with us on the trip?
Matt Collette from
Matt with technology.
So the feedback from the building felt like that's a
Oh, yes.
manageable system and,
Absolutely.
okay. Thank you.
We will still have wands on hand
Yes.
if needed
If
and
needed.
everything, if the
Yes.
situation arises, or there has to be like a deeper type, but we won't have to rely on them as much as we do right now.
Yeah, this system.
good ones.
Yeah, this system actually will, as you go through, will detect where it is on your person. So if, as they go through and they go to the side, instead of looking all over, they can say, oh, it's on your shoulder.
Yeah.
So they can identify, look on your shoulder, see if anything's there.
TSA.
Yeah.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Guerrero Namir?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
All right, action item F, disposal of equipment. May I have a motion and a second, please?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Questions, comments? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Namir?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Action item G, City of Joliet Route 66 Stillman Statue Proposal.
So
May I
moved,
have a-
yes, amen. Does that count?
May I have a second?
Second.
Questions, comments?
We're just very thankful that the city is looking to highlight, our history as part of the work. And we do have city planner, Jane Bernhardt here if there's any questions, but we're excited about the representation.
I also, she is a graduate of Joliet Central, so that was really cool to see her name come across, our email. The artists that you chose are amazing. I think we're all just really excited. I had to go down and see exactly where you're going to put it and, have some ice cream at the same time.
I did too. I did the same thing.
So, yeah, we're really excited and we're very grateful. And whoever on your team came up with this idea, I'm sure you're one of them, tell them thank you and we appreciate them.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Namir?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Action item H, 2024-25 Winter Spring Holiday Schedule. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Questions, comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Namir?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes. Action item I, second reading of board policies 1 through 10.
I move to table action item I until after action item N.
Okay, so a motion for,
Table.
a motion for 2 through 10. I have a motion for 2 through 10.
Just want 2 through 10.
Yeah, we're tabling number 1.
Just number 1.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll do a motion to, we're tabling, we already did that. Are we voting on the tabling or voting on?
Vote on the table first. and then
We
vote
vote on the table first? Okay. So we're going to vote on the table first. May I have a motion to table number 1?
Yes.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Second, oh.
Now may I have a, roll call?
It's all good.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown O'Meara?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
May I have a motion to approve 2 through 10?
So moved.
Second.
Questions, comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown O'Meara?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Will we we're tabling this until the end of action items, correct?
Until the end of, action item N.
Okay.
We'll revisit it after.
All right. Action item J, I believe it should say second reading?
Yes, it's actually second reading, so the board saw all of these last time.
Yeah.
That was just a mistake.
So,
I know, I'm sorry.
action item J, second reading of rewritten board policy number 1. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved as a second, the change to second.
Oh,
It's all right. Just a
Okay.
motion with a change from first to second.
yep. Okay.
Second that.
Question, comment? Roll call, please.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown O'Meara?
Yes.
Action item K should also read second reading of new board policy number 1. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Question, comments? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Brown O'Meara?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Action item L, second reading of 5-year review, 1 through 10. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Questions, comments? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown O'Meara?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Action item M, personnel reports, 1 through 14. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown O'Meara?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Action item N, student discipline recommendation.
After receiving and deliberating the information contained in the hearing officer's report, the Board of Education is charged with deciding, number 1, whether removing the child from his or her learning environment is in the best interest of the school. Number 2, what the rationale is for the specific duration of the recommended expulsion. Number 3, whether all appropriate and available behavioral and disciplinary interventions were exhausted. And number 4, whether the continued presence in school would either A, pose a threat to the safety of other students, staff, or members of the school community, or B, substantially disrupt, impede, or interfere with the operation of school. The Board of Education must then convene in a public session to formally vote on the motion to expel if expulsion is the consensus arrived at during the executive session. I make a motion under case number C2322417 to recommend expulsion until June of 2026 and place at Lincoln School.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown O'Meara?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
I make a motion for case number C232418, recommend expulsion until June of 2026 and place at Lincoln School.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown O'Meara?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
All right, we will now go back to action item I, second reading of board policy number 1, 2.40, board member qualifications.
So I was reading through that, and there is a state law on being a member of the school board is that you can't have any felonies or have any sex offender or anything like that. However, there's no background on that. I know that I wasn't done a background check when I came into office. So I'm proposing that we make this resolution to the ISSB to be more specific and have some guidelines on who is responsible for these checks and balances, and making sure that when someone becomes on the school board, that they are not a predator or have a felony. And so if you guys agree with this resolution, I will write it up and send it to this IASB, and we could not only be on our books, but for the entire state.
Has there been any discussion with the Regional Office of Education about this process?
No.
Do you think it might be to our benefit to have a chat with them before we would make that proposal? Because we're basically saying they need to do this for any school districts under their purview. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I just would, do they have the capacity? Or is this, because I know districts have the ability to also do background checks. So I'm just curious if, they would feel like they would have the capacity to do it, or if they would, you don't want to propose something and then find out that all these regional offices will kind of push back.
I can call.
I mean, it'd be nice to have, we're both proposing it and not just,
The reason I didn't put in there for each individual school, because I wouldn't want a school to determine, hey, they have a criminal background check, and to determine, who's on the board and not on the board. So I tried to think of a non-biased entity that could do it.
Sure. That they would be good people to do it,
Yeah.
I just would want to, they would be on board before we would make that proposal.
Okay, I'll give them a call.
Because they do perform background checks,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
they do.
Just wanted to make sure. So what do you want to do?
So do you want to table that one until the next meeting, until we contact the ROE?
That would be my recommendation.
If we table it, it will be past the deadline of being able to bring the resolution to the state,
What's the deadline?
June 26th. I apologize.
I mean, just as President just stated, they already do that as part of, their services, so I don't think it would be a bad idea to.
Well, but they haven't done it for board members before. They do it
And
as
I
part of,
understand
yeah,
that. I'm
like,
just saying, I think it's something that I wouldn't mind. I mean, again, we didn't ask, but.
And I guess I didn't think about it, but usually it's 5, it depends on how many positions are open, but, it's 4 to 5 people, so it's not an unreasonable amount of background checks at the beginning. And I tried to put the responsibility all on the candidate.
so could we though make this change to our couldn't it be in our policy that if you run for the board, you have to have a criminal background check? I mean,
Yes.
that way, you're not looking at this being a statewide, recommendation. I mean, I don't think it's a bad idea, but I'm just saying then, we can be in control of that ourselves, right? So if you're gonna apply and you win the election, your first stop has to be see the regional office or the state police and produce a criminal background check.
I was proposing before elections, because why have someone voted into office if then they are going to be taken off of office?
But they're not gonna, the clerk's office won't allow, that's not a requirement that they have necessarily. So will the clerk's office be able to say, no, you can't run without the criminal background check?
Well, that's what I'm proposing. However, if we want to make we could make our specific, we can put it forth on our res stuff right now as our board, and then I can also send this resolution. So, we could do it as after you're elected, then go through it.
Well, I think we'd have more teeth that way, right? Because like you can't make, if they're not even on the board yet, right? They didn't get elected in and right? Like I understand what you're saying,
Yes.
The
but,
clerk could, you're saying unless the clerk could kick them off.
Right.
But there's nothing.
I don't think that
in
there's,
election laws.
Well, that's what
But
we're trying to change.
That's what we're proposing. So
That's what- yeah.
if there is a candidate that is interested in being on the school board, once they submit their petitions, they have to get that background check prior to the submission of their petitions.
That's what we're trying to get into the law. And so I would be proposing it to the ISB, and then from there, it gets voted on during the conference as if they want to bring it forth.
Yes.
And then from there, they would go to the legislators.
And then I think IASB and the state would then, it would be a trickle-down effect where they would mandate the ROEs
Yes.
to do the service.
But so we could do twofold.
I was gonna say, are we voting to approve the qualifications, and then we're voting to approve pushing this to ISB
Well, we can change our own qualifications if we
if we want?
wanted to.
Yeah.
And then
This is
that we
just
would
the
already have that in ours. Yes.
So are we gonna vote on two separate things?
we're gonna have to, because right now, this is the question on here is to approve the adjusted, right, board policy.
I think what Chrissy is requesting is that we move forward with the resolution to IASB. So we can, even at our next meeting or our committee of the whole, we could discuss our own policy.
Okay.
Okay, so we're not, so we didn't need to pull that off we still need to approve this, because it's the second reading on the changes that were requested,
Yes.
right?
We just want
So
to-
under new business, we're looking to give Chrissy the go-ahead to bring this to IASB.
Both of them are based on the same thing, so we could do two separate votes based on the same thing, because it's in the agenda. So we could vote to approve the changes that were already listed, and vote to approve the resolution, because the resolution is tied to that specific policy.
Right, so what we're saying is the policy doesn't go far enough. It states you can't have a felony, you can't have bribery, or you can't be a child sex offender. But there is no process.
Check.
Right, there's no check on that. That's not the word I wanted to use. But there's no process for that. And so we've recently seen where there's been people in elected positions with felonies. Once they get in there, it's hard to remove them. We just can't say you're no longer on the board. There's a process that we have to follow, and it could take a year. And here we have someone on the board that could be a child sex offender, and, we have them here on our campus. No, that shouldn't be allowed. So we're just requesting to submit the resolution to IASB and take it a step further with mandating background checks.
So should we just do two separate votes? One to approve what was in the packet, and then one to approve you taking the resolution forward?
Well, unless we want
I'm good
to,
with both of them.
unless we want to discuss further of adding our own criteria and our own board policy.
I think that's gonna take more than a
Yes.
conversation
Yeah.
here,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
I would agree.
So let's approve what we already have set forth, and then we can continue that conversation.
My concern, I agree with what everybody's saying, but my concern is doing it before they submit their petition and creating additional barriers to people running.
Well,
And I think
Because
that's
it's an
what the
additional
problem's gonna be.
step, and somebody may or may not even know what the Regional Office of Education is. And I'm just afraid that this would create additional barriers for those that want to run.
That's fine.
I think it's a necessary barrier, though.
Yes.
There's certain things that you have to do to become, and if we're gonna prevent someone who's on a national sex offender registry from being on a school board.
I'm not, no, I
Yeah,
completely
right, I'm
agree
just
with
saying,
that, for
I hear
sure.
what you're saying about the barrier, but I
For
think
sure.
it's an okay barrier. If we're gonna put any barrier in, I'm okay with this.
And I chose
But I hear
before.
what you're saying, for sure.
I chose before is because, as Michelle said, is if they're voted in and they're on the ballot, then they're voted in, and then there's going to be a process of getting them off. So this is, my thought process is having it a check before they even are on the ballot.
Not a
Well,
bad
this
idea,
resolution has
but
to
I
go
just,
to
yeah.
ISB, they have to approve it amongst all the districts, and then they still have to take it to the legislator, and there's no guarantee that they'll.
Yeah.
But at least it's something we can put forward. I think it's a good idea. So I think that we need a motion for each one of them. Go from there.
And I really hope that anyone that runs for the Board of Education for JTHS knows what the Regional Office of Education is.
Yeah, but you're talking about a statewide thing, so some may
It's
not.
county, it's,
All right, so we
Okay.
need two votes.
Yep, so may I have a motion to approve number 1?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Almair?
yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Then I'll make a motion for Christine to submit her resolution to ISB.
Second. Can I second, Mayor?
Second.
Can I just ask that, I think it would be helpful if you did contact the Regional Office of Education and even the County Clerk's Office to see, like, if this is something that would be feasible, just for us to know. I'm not stopping you from doing that, I would just be kind of curious for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you find that information out, if you want to share it, we could either share it out at the next board meeting, or you can let me know and I can email it out to the
Okay.
board.
Roll call, please.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
No, I believe it creates additional barrier to people wanting to run for school board.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Almair?
Yes, to create additional barriers for anyone that might be a sex offender, et cetera, from running for office for a Board of Education.
All right. Unfinished business? None? New business?
I just want, it's not new business, but we have Jacob Schultz with us this evening. He's currently our dispatcher for transportation, and he was board approved tonight to move into the safety coordinator for transportation.
Congratulations.
Thank you for coming tonight.
Are there any board reports?
I just want to say congratulations. We had several students and alum, et cetera, that were part of the Susical at Bicentennial Park. That's going on this weekend coming up. They did a fantastic job. I might have seen a Susical or two before, and they did awesome. And you can usually see them most years at Bicentennial Park. That's the Dr. Seuss musical, in case you didn't know what that was.
Just
Spoke at the CED.
I did. I wanted to say, I know it seems like forever ago, but I think it was after the last board meeting, but we had 4 successful graduation ceremonies, and I want to thank the board members who were able to participate, and the campuses did a wonderful job, as always with graduation. So I know I enjoyed them, and I thank everyone for their attendance as well. And yes, I did have the opportunity to speak at the CED breakfast last week, and I would say there's probably around 200, 250 people in attendance, and I'm very thankful to President Stiff for relaying that I was stuck on 80, and basically had to run to the stage. And so, but it was a good opportunity to highlight the partnership with internships. I stayed afterwards and talked to a lot of Will County businesses that were interested and intrigued about the pilot program. And I actually have a meeting tomorrow. I'm serving on the CED committee for expansion of the program to larger Will County. And we had Kayla Sorensen come in to our trees meeting to talk to all the area superintendents to make sure they were aware. And so we're going to talk about the parameters because this is good for kids. And we want to, share what we've learned and make sure that other kids have the opportunity as well. So it was a great event and I was honored to be asked. And then also the foundation had a wonderful golf outing. It was hot, but it was a wonderful golf outing. Lots of sponsorships. Golfers was a little down, but we have Shad, Takara, and Diane that serve on the foundation board. And so thank you to them and the rest of the foundation. But I think it did what it was supposed to and raised money for scholarships and grants. And it was a very nice event. And we also celebrated the 100th birthday of a graduate, 1942 graduate from Joliet Central. He was in Phoenix, so we did a virtual type capturing of it. But hopefully he enjoyed our birthday singing and well wishes. So that was exciting.
That's really cool.
It was.
Can you move it to 9 holes and then maybe I might look at that? Not do 18.
And they're always looking for help, because I don't golf either. I don't want to. But they love having volunteers to help with setup, to greet. And at the end, it's always a nice opportunity to come and meet the golfers at the end. They have raffles. So if you ever don't want to golf, but still partake in the golf outing, I'll share how I do it, because I do not golf. I do find it foursome, though.
Okay, that's good to know.
Can I say, since we just brought up golf, I just want to say our JTHS golf camp for the littles was so awesome, and my goddaughter and her bestie, Charlotte Perez, were just absolutely loved golf camp, and they showed off their golf clubs, and we're practicing on Saturday at a birthday party, so yeah, it was just good job to everyone that runs that.
Any other board reports? Okay. Announcements, public comment? All right, good stuff. Thank you, it was a very good meeting. May I have a